Hey guys, welcome to another web development crash course. In this video we're going to cover all of the basics of ExpressJS. Now if you've been building applications with Express for a while, then you're probably not going to learn too much more in this video than you already know. However, if you're either just starting out or maybe you've built one or two small applications with Express, then this could help you out a little bit. Alright, we're not going to focus on making some super application, but we're going to look at some of the core concepts and how they work. Alright, so let's first talk about what Express actually is. So it's a minimalistic open source web framework for Node.JS, and it provides us with a bunch of different features to build powerful web applications and APIs. Express is also the most popular web framework for Node.JS by far, and don't quote me on this, but I think it's the most downloaded Node module in general. If not, it's definitely within the top 5. Okay, so it's really popular. There's a lot of documentation and support on the web for it. Express also uses the MVC, or Model View Controller, design concept or design pattern. Controllers are used to do things like direct traffic and load views, and models are used to work with databases and data stores, and then views are used to display the user interface. Alright, of course all applications vary on how much of the MVC design pattern they actually use, but in general Express is considered an MVC framework. Alright, so let's take a quick look at what you'll be learning in this video. So these are just the main topics. We'll be branching off into other areas, but these are the core concepts that we'll be talking about. So we have the installation and setup of Express, and this includes creating a package.json file and including our dependencies. Okay, we'll also look at middleware and routing, which are two really important concepts in Express. I'll show you how to handle an incoming HTTP request and route that to a template engine. Alright, some of the template engines or view engines that we'll talk about are EJS, Handlebars, and Jade, which is also known as Pug. We'll also talk about forms and input, so we can create a form in our view and submit that to our application and handle that data accordingly. Alright, and then we'll even implement an ORM with MongoDB, so something like Mongoose or MongoJS, something that will allow us to query a database. Alright, and then we'll also take a look at the Express generator, which is used to prototype a quick boilerplate application, and we'll do that last because I want you to really understand how to set things up manually before just using a generator to create your code. So we're going to start with installation and setup of Node and Express. Alright, so there are very few requirements for Express. The only thing you really need to have installed is Node.js. Alright, you also need NPM, but NPM comes with Node.js, and that stands for Node Package Modules, and it's used to install modules from a repository into your application. Alright, and then the only commands that we really need to install Express is, first of all, npm init is going to be used to generate a package.json file. Alright, we need that for our application, and then we can go ahead and install Express using npm. So if we say npm install Express and we add the save flag, what that's going to do is it's going to add it to the package.json file. Alright, or of course we could just add it to the file and then run npm install. Alright, so let's jump in and take a look at how this works. Alright, so before we get into Express, you need to have Node.js installed. Alright, I already have it installed on my machine, so I'm not going to go through the installation, but it's very simple. If you're on Windows, just go to nodejs.org, go ahead and download the package, the exe file, and install it. Okay, really easy. Once you do that, you'll have Node installed and you'll have access to npm. Alright, now once that's done, what I'm going to do is create a new folder, and we're just going to call this customer app. Okay, we're not building a full-fledged application here. It's just something to work with and give you some examples with. Alright, and then what we're going to do is let's open this in the command line. Now I'm using this git bash utility, which I'll show you the link in a second. Basically, it's just an alternative to Windows command prompt. It includes the git version control system, although we're not really going to get into that. But I just prefer using this over the standard Windows command line. And if you want to get this yourself, I think it's git-scm.com. Yeah, git-scm.com, and you can go ahead and download that if you want. All right, or of course you can use your regular Windows command prompt. So what we're going to do now is we're going to create a package.json file. Now we could just create it right in our folder, but the easier way to do it is to run npm init. All right, and like I said, if you have Node.js installed, npm should work with no problem. All right, so it's just going to basically ask us a couple questions here. Make this a little bigger. Okay, so the name of our app, the default will be customer app, which is what we call the folder. So I'm just going to click enter. Version, we'll keep that, that's fine. For a description, we'll just say simple customer management app. Entry point, I usually like to call this app.js, but of course you can call it whatever you'd like. And then the rest of these, we don't really need. You can put your name here, or your company. Okay, and it's going to ask us to check it, and we'll click enter or yes. All right, now if we look in our folder, we now have a package.json file. All right, now I'm going to open this up in my editor. I'm using Sublime Text, but of course you can use whatever you'd like. So let's say add folder, desktop, customer app. Okay, so let's take a look at the package.json file. So basically it's just all the stuff that it asked us in the command line. Now there's basically two things we can do here to install Express. Alright, so one would to be, let me just go back to my editor, not my editor, my command line, and we could run npm install express, and that would install it, and then we could even add -- save, and that would actually add it to this package.json file. Alright, we could do that and just install all of our modules like this. For instance, we're going to need another one called body parser, which is going to handle parsing requests that come in, incoming requests, and make it so that we can grab form data, things like that. Alright, so we would have to also run npm install body parser. Alright, and then any other dependencies that we wanted. But another way to do it, let me just get rid of this. Another way to do it would be just to add them ourselves to this file. Alright, so that's what we're going to do. We're just going to add in here dependencies, set that to an object, make sure you put a comma there. Okay, and then we're going to say we want express, and then what we need to do here is you'll put some kind of version. Alright, now I don't know, well I do know the latest version, but oftentimes you won't. So what you could do is just put an asterisk, and that's going to basically say that you want the latest version. Alright, so we want that, and then we also want body parser, and we'll get the latest version of that as well. Alright, so if you have a ton of dependencies, it's easier just to include them all here than to just do them one by one with npm install. Of course you could add them all to the same npm install command, but I find it easier to do it this way. So we want to save that, and once we have our dependencies in there, we just want to run npm install by itself. Okay, so we'll run that, and you can see up here it created a node modules folder, and it has Express installed along with body parser. Alright, so technically Express is now installed. So now what we want to do is create our entry file, and you can see here that we defined app.js as the entry file. So we're going to go and just say new file, and let's save it as app.js. Now using Node.js we could run this file if we want. So if we say console.log, and we'll just say hello world, save it, and then down in the console here we'll say node app, and we get hello world. Okay, so the node command along with app, which is the name of the file. Okay, we could of course say node app.js as well. Alright, so let's go ahead and get rid of this, and what we want to do, usually what you'll see at the top of your entry file for Express is a bunch of imports or requires. Okay, so we want to require any module or any other file that we're going to want to use. So of course we're going to need to bring in Express. So what we'll do is set that to require Express. Alright, or you might see the ES 2015 syntax where we import stuff. We'll say like import app, something like that. Alright, but we're going to stick to this method of requiring modules. Alright, so we're also going to need body parser, which we installed. So we'll say var body parser, and that's going to require body parser. Okay, and then we're also going to use a module called path. Now path is used to simplify just that file paths. Alright, so the reason that we didn't do npm install path or add it to our package.json file is because it's a core module. Okay, so we don't need to install it separately. So we're just going to set that to require path. Okay, so those are the requirements that we need, and now what we want to do is initialize a variable usually called app, and we're going to set it to the express function just like that. Alright, now it's not going to run yet. What we need to do is we need to listen on a port. So we can take that app and then call .listen and specify a port, which I'm going to use 3000, and then that has a callback function we can use, and we can just do a console log, and usually we'll say something like server started on port 3000. Okay, so that is officially an Express app. Okay, so if we save this and then we go and rerun node app, you'll see that we have server started on port 3000. And if I go to localhost port 3000, and you'll see that all we get here is a message that says cannot get slash. So slash, when we're dealing with routes, is equal to the home page. Okay, so that's what that means. If I was to go to slash about, then it's going to tell us that it can't get the about route. Alright, and we're getting this because we haven't set up any kind of route for slash or for about or for anything. Alright, so that's what we need to do next. So we'll go back into Sublime, and let's go, I usually like to put the routes somewhere around here. So we'll say app.get. Now we're using get because we want to handle a get request. When you visit an application, you type in a URL and you go to that application or that website, that's making a get request. Alright, if you're submitting a form and you're submitting data to a server, that's usually a post request. So you would do app.post, but we'll get into that later. So we want app.get, and we want to put the URL, which in this case we want to handle request to the home page, which is represented with a slash. Alright, and then what we need to do is put a second parameter in here, which is going to be a callback function. Okay, or just an unnamed function. And that's going to take in parameters of request and response. Alright, and then what we do in here is completely up to us. In this case, what we'll do is just say res, so we're going to take that response, and we're going to use the send method. Okay, and then we can just say hello world. Alright, so if I was to save that and reload, it's not going to change yet because we edited this file and we didn't restart the server, so there's no change. So let's go ahead and restart this. We'll do Control-C to stop it, and then we'll run node app again. You can see it started back up, and if I go and reload, now we get hello world. Alright, so all this send method does is just print out whatever you put in here onto the screen. Alright, if we look at the source code, it's just hello world. Now, ideally, you're probably going to want to do something like render a view when you handle in your route handler. Okay, you're generally not going to want to just put something on the screen here. All right, but we'll get to that. Before we get to that, I want to talk a little bit about middleware. So middleware are basically functions that have access to that request and response object, and also access to the next piece of middleware that's going to fire after it. Alright, now most modules have their own middleware that needs to be set up. For instance, body parser actually does have a couple lines of middleware we have to include in here, but I'm going to do that after. What I want to do is just write some very, very basic custom middleware so you can see how it works. Alright, now what we'll do here is we'll create a variable called logger, and we're going to set that to a function that is going to take in a couple parameters. It's going to take request, response, and next. Alright, and then in here what we'll do is keep it simple. We'll just do a quick console log, and we'll just say logging, and then to end this piece of middleware and fire the next one, we're just going to call the next function like that. Alright, now if we just run it like this, it's not going to do anything. What we need to do is say app.use to be able to use that middleware, and then we'll just pass in logger. Okay, so let's go ahead and save that, and then if we restart our application and then we were to reload the app, and let's look in the console, and you can see we get logging. Okay, every time I reload, it's going to do that logging. It's going to run that middleware. Alright, now the order of the middleware is important. If we were to take that away and put it after the route handler, like that, and then restart and reload our application, you can see it's not printing out logging. So the order is very important. And the functionality that happens in middleware is completely custom, and you have full access to the request and response. You can stop it if you want. You can change it. You can do pretty much anything, and it'll run every time the application is loaded. All right. So I'm going to take that out because I just wanted to give you that as an example. Actually, I won't take it out. I'll comment it out. Alright, and then what we'll do is we need to actually add some middleware for the body parser. So let's say app.use, and we're going to put in body parser .json, so that'll handle parsing JSON content. And then we're also going to do another app.use and say body parser .url encoded, and then we need to pass in an object here, extended false. Okay, and this middleware is right in the documentation for the body parser. So let's just say body parser middleware. Alright, so that should be all set. The next thing we want to do is we want to set up a line of middleware for our public folder, okay, so or our static folder, because we need a place to put static resources like CSS files, things like jQuery, stuff like that. All right, so we can actually define that. So let's say set static path, and we'll say app.use, and then we want to pass in here express.static, and we're going to use that path module. We're going to say path.join, and in here we're going to do _dir name, and then the name of the folder we want to use, which for the most part I call public. Alright, some people might call it client, something like that, but I usually call it public. So if we save that and then we create a folder, in our application called public, that's where we want to put any CSS files or anything like that, any kind of static resources. All right, if we were to actually put in a file here called index.html and just say test, and if we reload, well, actually we have to restart the server. You can see we get that file, that index.html is gonna always overwrite what we have in our app.js. All right, so if you wanted to just have your server and then maybe have something like an Angular application, which is a client-side JavaScript framework, you would put all of that in the public folder. All right, but we're not going to be doing that. We actually want to render views from the server, so I'm going to delete that. Now, having to restart the server every time we make a change can get quite annoying. So there are utilities we can use to fix that, and one of those is NodeMon. So let me just show you how we can set that up. All right, so we want to install it. So we're going to say npm install NodeMon. Now, what we want to do is we want to install it globally. Okay, we don't want it just in this application just to go in the node modules folder. We want to be able to use it anywhere. So all we have to do is add -g, and that's going to install it globally. Okay, so we'll let that run. All right, so now that that's set up, instead of saying node app, we're just going to say NodeMon. Okay, and if we reload, you can see we get our hello world. And let me go and change this. We'll just say hello, save, reload, and we get hello. Okay, I didn't have to go and restart the server. NodeMon did that automatically for us. All right, so very, very handy utility. Now, so far we've just used this res.send, and what I want to do now is show you that we can also parse JSON. All right, so let's say we have an object. Let's call this variable people, and actually let's just say person and set that to an object, and let's give that person a name. We'll say Jeff and an age of 30. Okay, so let's say we want to parse this object out to the browser. What we could do is, instead of saying res.send, we can say res.json, and then we'll just pass in person. All right, and if we save that and then reload, you can see that it actually parses the JSON for us. All right, we could also make this an array. So if we said people and set that, put a bracket here and here. Okay, and then we'll go like that. Say Sarah. And we'll do one more. Okay, and if I save that, reload, oh, we gotta put people in here. Okay, so there we go. So we're parsing an array of objects. All right, and this is exactly how APIs are written. So if you wanted to have some kind of client-side application that made a request to our server to fetch a list of users and then render it in that application, we could easily do that. And I actually have a couple videos on my YouTube channel that will show you exactly how to do that. All right, so I'm going to get rid of this for now. And what we're going to do, we'll just go back to send for now. Okay, so now what we're going to do is I'm going to move on to working with template engines. So let's go ahead and start with EJS, which is embedded JavaScript, and this is actually the template engine that I like to use because it's very, very simple. It's just standard HTML with some variable includes that we can use, other than something like Pug or Jade, which kind of changes the whole syntax. It uses indents instead of tags and can be a little confusing. So I like to use EJS, and it's very easy to get set up. So what we'll do is let's go to our command line here, stop the server, and we're going to say npm install EJS, and let's say --save. Okay, now if we look at the package.json file, you can see that it automatically added it to this file because we used that save flag. Alright, so what we need to do to set this up is first we need to add some middleware. So let's go right here, and we'll just say view engine, and we need to say app.set, and we're going to set view engine and set that as EJS. Now we also have to specify what folder we want to use for our views. So right underneath, let's say app.set, and we want to set views, and then we're going to say path.join, and then specify views. Okay, just like we did with the static folder down here. So let's save that, and then we're going to create a folder called views, and let's create an index view. So we'll say new file, so I'm going to save it as index.ejs. Alright, and then in here let's just say we'll say hello from EJS. Save it. Actually, we'll wrap it in an H1. Okay, and then back in our app.js, what we can do is go down to our route for our home page or for slash, and instead of res.send, we're going to use res.render. Okay, and then we're just going to pass in index. Save that. Reload. And whoops, we have to start our server. So we'll use nodemon. And there we go. So we get hello from EJS. So setting up a view is as simple as that. Now it's not just static content that we can render, that we put in the EJS file. We can actually pass values into it. So for instance, let's create a variable called title, and we'll set it to customers. Alright, and then let's say we want to pass that into our index view. So what we can do is just add a second parameter, which will be an object, and we could give this a variable name that we want to use inside the view. Let's say title, and we'll actually, you know what, we won't put it as a separate variable. Let's just go like this. Okay, so we're just passing in a title to the view. Now in order to get that to render, what we can do is use the less than, and then percent, and then equals, and then whatever we called it, which was title, and then percent greater than. Okay, we'll save that, reload, and you can see we get customers. Now you probably want to have HTML structure, so let's do, oh, I guess I don't have the shortcut. I thought I did. Oh, it's not working. Alright, so I'm just going to have to type it out. So we'll say HTML, and we'll put head tags, body tags. Okay, we'll take this and put it in the body, and then inside the head we'll put a title. We'll say my express app. Okay, if we save that and reload and we do a Control U, you can see that we're getting that HTML structure. Now you're probably going to have multiple views in your application, And you don't want to have to keep repeating yourself. You don't want to have to keep putting these in every single view. So with EJS, usually you would use partials for this. So what I'll do is create a folder inside the views folder called partials, and let's create a file called header.ejs and then another file called footer.ejs. And then what we'll do is take from here to here, cut that out, put it inside the header, and then we'll take from here to here, cut that out, and put that inside the footer. Alright, and then what we need to do is then include them in this file. Alright, so right here, let's say include, and I think we should be able to just say partials, partials slash header, and then we'll put, this one will be footer. Alright, so let's go ahead and save it, reload, and if we look at the source code, you can see it's still included. And just to make sure that it's coming from the header, we'll change this to customer app. Save it, reload, and we get customer app. So now what I want to do is show you that we can also pass along arrays or objects or other data types as variables, okay? Because in this example, we're just passing a string. So what I'm going to do is create a variable called users, and we're going to set that to an array. And this is basically going to be just like the people objects that we created earlier. So we'll say first name, last name, and let's do email, and let's also give them an ID. Alright, and then I'm just going to copy this, change these up a little bit, say Jill Jackson. Alright, so we have this array of users, and what we want to do is include that down here as users. Alright, so we'll save that. Now if I was to just stick in here, let's just do users, and let's save it. Okay, so that's what we get if we try to do that, and that's because these are objects. We can't just print an object like that. What we have to do is iterate through the array and then print out the objects one by one along with whatever property we want to output. So doing that is not too hard. What we'll have to do is let's get rid of that. And now notice that here I used the equal sign and here I didn't. The reason for that is because when you're actually outputting a value like this, you want to use the equals. If not, you want to use just the %. Alright, so this is going to be a for each loop. So we're not going to do the equal sign here. We're going to say users dot for each, and then what we want to do is put in a function like that. Okay, and we have to make sure that both sides are capped off with this % and then greater than or less than. Okay, and then in here what we can do is let's actually put a UL on the outside. Okay, and then inside, inside we'll have LIs. And in here Now we want to use the equal sign because we're actually outputting. And actually I need to put in here user. Okay, of course that could be whatever you'd like, but obviously user makes sense. So we'll say user dot first name, just like that. Okay, we'll save it, reload, and now you can see that it's printing out each user's first name. Okay, if we want the last name, I can copy that, paste that in, change that to last name, and now we get the user's first and last name. Now I was going to try to fit in an example from Pug or Jade or some other template engines, but we're really running low on time here, and it's basically the same kind of thing. You just want to set up the middleware in the app.js file right here, and then go ahead and just call render, res.render, whatever the view is. If you're using Pug, I think the extension is still .jade, but I'm not sure. You just want to include the correct extension and then just use the syntax that that particular template engine uses. Alright, so what I want to do now is get into forms and input. Alright, so let's go back to our index, and I'm going to go right below the header up at the top here, and let's put in an H3. Should we do an H3? No, let's do an H1, and we'll just say add customer, and then we're going to put in a form here. So just standard HTML. We'll have a first name. This will be an input with the type of text, and let's see, we're going to give it a name of first name. Okay, then we'll do a line break. Let's copy that. This will be the last name. And then we'll have the email. Okay, we're going to want to put a submit button here, so we'll say input type is going to be submit, and value we'll also say submit. Alright, let's put line breaks here. Okay, if we save that, there's our form. Let's put line breaks after the label as well. Alright, now in our form tag up here, we need to specify a couple things. One's going to be the method. Okay, the request method is going to be post, and then the action is going to be the route that we want to submit to. So let's say we want it users/add. Alright, so if we were to save that, and then we'll go to app.js, and we have to catch that submission. So it's a post request, so we need app.post, and then the actual URL is going to be /users/add. Okay, and then we'll have a callback function just like we did above, and that's going to take request response, and just to test things out, we'll just say console.log, and we'll say form submitted. Okay, save that, reload, submit, and if we look down here, you can see we get form submitted. Alright, so what we need to do is we want to obviously grab the values that are typed in here. Alright, now to do that, very easy, let's create actually, you know what, let's say console.log, and then we'll do request.body.firstname. What's that? What happened? Oh, I went to users add. Alright, so request.body.firstname, so let's put in Jeff. Okay, these don't matter. Submit, and you can see we get Jeff. So that's how you can access the actual value. Now the first name right here, where that's coming from, is the name attribute. Alright, now what I'm going to want to do is take those values and then have an object, create an object. So we'll say var user, let's say new user equals, let's see, new user equals, and then we'll say first name will be request.body.firstname. And then we'll have last name and email. Okay, so when that form's submitted, it's going to create this new user, and we can test it out by console logging. Okay, so let's say Jeff Smith if I was to submit that and look at the console, you can see that we're getting that object. Now, in a production application, you're probably going to want to use some validation for your forms, for your input. All right, now there's a few different options for that. You could do it manually, and then there's a bunch of modules you could use, and the one that I'd actually suggest to use with Express is actually Express Validator. Alright, so let's go to the GitHub page here, and to set this up, we're going to go ahead and run this npm install command. So let's go and stop this with Control-C. We'll say npm install express validator and then ..save. Okay. So we'll run the application again with NodeMon, and if we look in package.json, you can see that we have Express Validator. Alright, so now we need to go back to our app.js, and we need to first of all require it up here. So we're going to say var Express Validator, and then put in our require. Alright, now this has middleware that needs to be added as well. So if we look down here, this is all the usage, but if we scroll down a little more, you can see the middleware options. So what we want to do is grab this block right here. Okay, we're going to copy that, and let's bring this down to right here. Put in a little comment here. So basically it's just setting up the error formatter and so on. Now once we do that, we should be able to go down to our add function here, and we should be able to set some rules for our fields. Alright, so to do that, let's see. Yeah, we want to do this right here, request check body. Alright, so let's say request.check body, and then we want to put the field that we want. So let's do first name, and then the second parameter is going to be the message for this particular rule. So let's say first name is required. Okay, and then we just want to add to the end here the actual rule that we want, and this is going to be not empty. Okay, so should be able to do that, and that's going to specify that first name now is required. And let's do the same for last name and email. So we'll copy that. Okay, this one will be last name. and this one will be email. All right. Then what we have to do is put a variable called errors and set that to request.validation errors. And then we want to check to see if there's any errors. So we'll say if errors. Then we want to do something else. If there's no errors, then we just want to do this. Create our object. Create our object, and then we'll say console.log success. All right, and for now, we'll check for errors, and we'll say console.log errors. Okay, now we'll get more specific, but just to test up to this point, let's go ahead and try this. All right, so let's see, go back, make sure our server is running, and let's just do test. Actually, we'll just try it, we'll leave it blank and submit, and then down here you can see that we're getting errors. All right, so that's good. If we do fill in all of these and submit, we get success. So we know that the actual validation is working. So now it's just what do we want to happen when there's errors. All right, we obviously want these messages that we wrote to be output on the screen. So we'll just want to re-render this view. So up here, let's grab this. Actually, you know what? No, yeah, that's good. We'll just take this whole thing and then put it in here. And let's see. That's good. And then we also want to pass along the errors themselves. Okay. So if we were to submit, it just kind of re-renders the form for us. All right, now what we want to do is, since we pass those errors in, let's go to our index.js file. Let's go right above the form, and we're first going to check to see if there's errors. So we can do that by going like if errors. Okay, remember we need to begin and end these lines like that. So if there's errors, then what do we want to do? We want to loop through them just like we did with the users. So I'm just going to copy this whole for each. And then we'll just change users to errors. And here we'll say error. And let's see, I think let's put ULs. I think that what we want is going to be error.msg. Alright, now if I'm not mistaken, if we try it now, we save it and we try to go to localhost 3000, yeah, we get an error. Okay, it's saying errors is not defined, and I'm pretty sure we need to just add errors as a global variable. So if we go back to our app.js and let's go right above the validator middleware, we'll say global vars. And this has to be put in its own middleware, so app.use, and we should be able to put function, and this is going to have request, res, and next, And then all we want to do is set a global variable. So we're going to say res.local.errors, and by default set it to null. Alright, and then we'll call next. Okay, and then any other global variables that you want to add to your application you can put in here. Just use this res.local.whatever. Alright, so let's save that. And cannot set property errors of undefined. Oh, it needs to be locals, plural. There we go. Alright, so now if I submit, there we go. There's our required messages. Okay, if I was to fill out just first name, we get the other two. If I fill out the first two, we get email. If I fill out all of them, then we should see in the console success. Alright, so that's how Express Validators works. Alright, so let's see, we're running out of time here. So what I'm going to do now is move on to working with a database, and we're going to be using MongoDB. Alright, now if you don't have MongoDB installed, what you want to do is go to mongodb.com, click download, and you can see there's options for Windows, Linux, and Mac. If you're on Windows, go ahead and download it. Just install it using the MSI, and then you should be all set. I do have a video showing you how to install MongoDB in Windows, and I think I have one on Linux as well. So I already have it installed, so I'm not going to go through that, but get that set up, and then what we'll do is I'm going to open up a command line. Alright, now I'm going to just open up a standard Windows command line because for some reason I get issues when I use that the git bash utility with MongoDB. But what I'm going to do is navigate to where I installed it, which is in my C drive, MongoDB, and then in there we should have a bin folder. So we want to go into bin, and then I'm going to run the Mongo shell. Alright, so from here we can do commands like show DBs. You can see all I have is this local and test DB. So I'm going to create a new one, and we should be able to do that with use. So we'll say use, and I'm going to call it customer app. So you can see it says switch to DB customer app. And then I want it to create a collection. So I'm going to say db.create collection. And I'm just going to call this users. Okay, so now if we say show collections, you can see I have users. Alright, now what I want to do is just insert a user. So to do that, we'll say db.users.insert. Okay, and then in here, actually let's make this an array. Okay, first user object will have a first name, of John, then we'll do last name, Doe, and then, whoops, email, okay, there's one user, put a comma here, and then the next one, we'll say Beth, okay, then we'll do one more. Say Kevin, Alright, go ahead and add that. And let's see, n inserted 3. So now we'll do db.users.find. Okay, so now we have 3 users in the MongoDB database. And you can see it creates this object, this underscore ID, which is equal to an object ID. And then we have our first, last, and email. Okay, so now that that is done, we want to be able to bring our database into our application. Now there's a lot of different ORMs that we can use. Mongoose is a really popular one, but we're going to stick with a really simple one called MongoJS. Alright, so down here, let's see. Alright, so first thing we want to do is install it. So let me just close these up. And let's go to our git bash utility. And we're going to do npm install MongoJS and save. Alright, so now that that's installed, let's go ahead and run nodemon, and we're going to open up our app.js, and just like it says here, we need to require it, so we'll put that in right there, and then let's grab this and we'll paste this in. Okay, so the connection string, let's replace that. And we should be able to replace that with customer app, I think. And collections, we'll add users. Alright. And then if we go down here, you can see this query here is going to find everything. So let's go down to where our home route is, and let's grab this, copy it. Okay, we want to change this to db.users, and then in here is where we'll have an array of all the documents in the collection. So for right now, let's just do console.log docs. Alright, and then we want to move the render into there. Alright, so let's save that and go back to our application. Oh, we gotta start the server. What's this? Customer app is not defined. Alright, so the actual name up here, we gotta put in quotes like that. Okay, and now if we look in the console, you can see that we're getting the users from the database. Okay, so that's coming from our console log right here. Now what I want to do is, instead of including this static array of users, let's include docs, which is coming from the database. Okay, if we save that and reload, now you can see we're getting our users from the database. And if I can now get rid of these, like that, and there we go. So you can tell that these are fetched from the database because they're different names. Alright, and if I was to open up the console again and then just, let's see, I'm just going to I just want to add one more user from here. Change this to Jen Williams. Okay, and now if we go over here and reload, now you can see we get Jen Williams. So we're now talking to MongoDB. Now if we want to be able to add a customer, we can do that as well. Let's go back to this documentation and let's see, we want insert. if they have an example. Okay, so right here, insert. So let's go down to where our add is, and we want to go right here where we're just creating the user, and then we want to just say db.users.insert. Okay, and then in here, let's say new user, and then we should be able to put a callback function. So the function will take error and result, and then what we'll want to do here is check for an error, and we'll just console log it. Okay, and then if there's no error, let's just redirect. So we can say res.redirect, and we'll go back to slash. Alright, so let's give that a shot. So we'll say Ted Wilson, and submit, and there we go, Ted Wilson. If we reload, he should stay there. So that's how you can not only read from MongoDB, but we can add customers to the database. Now, to make a delete request is a little more tricky, alright, because we can't just put a link that's going to just go and just fire off a delete request. What we need to do is, well, there's a few things we can do, but what I would suggest doing is using something like jQuery or just regular JavaScript to make an AJAX, to make a delete request through AJAX. Alright, so that's what we'll do. I want to try to do this pretty quick so we can wrap up. But what we want to do is in customers, let's see, in the index, and let's see, let's go right after the last name, and we'll put an A tag here. We'll just send that to nothing, and let's see, we're going to say delete. Okay, so now each customer has a delete link. Now what we want to do is I'm going to use jQuery to create a click event for these delete links. Alright, so let's go to header EJS, and we're going to include jQuery here. Let's grab the CDN. So copy this. Okay, save that. And then what we're going to do is go to public, and let's create a folder called JS. And then inside JS, we'll create a file and save it as main.js. Alright, and then we want to also include that in the header. So we'll say script source, and since it's in the public folder, we can just say js/main.js. Alright, and just to test it out, let's do an alert 1. Okay, so now we know that that's linked. And now what we want to do is we're going to use jQuery. So let's say document dot not that. We want document dot ready. Pass in a function. And we're going to add a class to that link that we created. So we'll say class equals, and we'll say delete user. Okay, now inside here, we're going to use jQuery, and we're going to say dot delete user dot on, and it's going to be a click. So on click, and then we're going to create a function called delete user. All right, and this is wrong. This ending parenthesis should actually be right here. Okay, and then down here we're going to say function delete user, and let's just do an alert. Save that. So if I click one of these, you can see we're going to get an alert. All right, now we're going to need a way to send along the user's ID with this click. Okay, so the way we can do that is by adding on an attribute to the A tag here. So we're going to add a data attribute. We're going to say data-ID, and we should be able to use EJS here and say user._ID, just like that. Save that. Now I want to have a confirmation before we actually do the delete, so let's say var confirmation, and we're going to set that to confirm. We'll just say, are you sure? And then below it, we're going to do an if statement checking for that confirmation. And let's just test it up to this point. Okay, asks us, okay, and we get the alert. Alright, so now what we want to do is make an AJAX request. Using jQuery, it's really easy. We can say $.AJAX, and in here we'll pass in, we'll go like that, and the type that we want is going to be a delete request. And the URL is going to be /users/ we'll do users/delete/ and then we have to add that ID. Now since we put it, we attached it to delete user to this class right here, then we're going to concatenate on like that, and we're going to say delete user dot data, and then pass in ID. Alright, because remember we use that data ID attribute. This is how we can actually grab that. Alright, and then down here we're going to say .done, pass in a function, and in here we'll get a response, and then we're going to redirect by saying window.location.replace, and pass in a slash for the home page. And then for this confirmation, we're going to do an else, and if they say no, then we're just going to return false. Alright, so that should do it. Let's save it. And then what we'll do is go to app.js, and we have to make that delete route. So we'll say app.delete, and then remember we submit to /users/delete/ and then we're going to do :ID, okay, because remember the ID of the user is unique, and that's going to get passed along in the URL. So then we'll put a function, and let's do request response. Alright, now we need to get that ID. So I want to just do a console log here, and we're going to log request.params.id. Alright, so let's save it up to this point. And if I click one of these, are you sure? Okay, and then let's look at the console. Okay, so it's giving us undefined. Okay, so it looks like this is undefined for some reason. Let's see. Oh, I didn't put a dot here for the class. Let's see if that makes a difference. So delete. Look at the console, still undefined. Oh, no. Oh, there we go. Okay, so now we're getting the object ID. If I press this one, delete, okay, and we get her ID. Are these this? No, these are different. Good. Alright, so it looks like the ID is going through, so we're almost there. Now we just need to do the delete query. So back in app.js, we can get rid of this, and we're going to say db.users.remove. Alright, and then I think in here what we need to do is put an object. I'm going to say underscore ID, and then we have to say object. I'm pretty sure we have to put this object ID and then pass in request.params.id. Alright, and then the next parameter will be the callback. Okay, so in here we'll put an error, and we'll check for the error. Okay, and then we just want to redirect. Alright, let's give it a shot. We'll save, reload. Let's see, we don't want Ted Wilson. Click OK. Alright, so he didn't delete. Let's see if we got anything here. Object ID is not defined, so that's not working. Oh, you know what I think I have to do is let's go up here to the top and create a variable called object ID, and then we're going to set that to MongoJS dot object ID. Let's do that. Nope. Property ID undefined. Oh, it should be params. Huh. Request params.id. Oh, what happened? Oh, that's not right. Okay, so it deleted the wrong person. I'm actually going to check this out, and I'll be right back. Alright guys, so I was able to find the issue, and the issue is in the main.js file that's in our public JS. And the reason that it's deleting the wrong one, it's always deleting the first user because they're all getting the same ID. The reason for that is you can see right here we're choosing them by the class delete user, and if we look in our index file they all have that same class. So what it's doing is it's just grabbing the first one and deleting it. So the solution for that is to change this from the .delete user to just this, and that'll grab that particular user or that ID. Alright, so if we save that and reload, if I click delete, you'll see Mike is still there. If I reload, he goes away. Alright, so the delete is working, it's just the afterwards it's not refreshing. The reason for that is for some reason this isn't running, it's going right after it. So what we can do is just copy that and then paste that right there, and then save it, reload. Let's go ahead and add someone. We'll just put whatever. Okay, and now we'll reload, click delete, okay, and now they're gone. Alright, so we can now do, we can read, we can delete, and we can add customers. Alright, so this has gone way longer than I expected. I apologize for that. Hopefully this wasn't too confusing. And what I would suggest is that you try and make it so that you can update these customers as well. Alright, that's kind of a little task that you guys can do. If I have the time, I'll figure it out and I'll paste it in the description. Okay, so that's going to be it. Hopefully you enjoyed this crash course on ExpressJS, and I will see you next time.